In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the fuel pump lock ring on the Chevy Silverado 2500. This is what holds the fuel pump onto the fuel tank, so we do have to remove the tank for this job. Let's install this TRQ lock ring. Before we disconnect anything and really get going on the job, I recommend pulling the fuel pump fuse while the vehicle is running. That stops the fuel pump from pumping, and therefore, as the engine is running, it'll use up the rest of the pressure that's in the rail. And then when you disconnect the lines, it's not going to spray at you. If you don't want to do this, don't, but I highly recommend it. In the underhood fuse box, which is this large cover here, located right next to your brake master cylinder. Once you pop that cover off, you'll see this relay here. This is the fuel pump relay. That little 25 amp fuse, not this one, but that one, is also the fuel pump fuse. Pull one of these two. It's easier to pull the relay. As the vehicle's running, that will shut the fuel pump off and do exactly what I said. Let's disconnect the battery, and I'm just going to disconnect the negative terminal on this one. My truck has two batteries. I'm going to show you how to disconnect both. If you just have one, it'll just be this one right here. There's the passenger side firewall right behind your coolant overflow tank. So let's grab a 10mm socket and loosen up this mounting nut that holds down the negative battery terminal. Once it's loose enough, you can just grab it, pull it aside, and make sure that you put it somewhere where it cannot bounce back onto the terminal. I'm going to tuck it right behind there like that. There's no way it's going to come up by itself. At this point, if you just had this one battery, you're done. It's disconnected. I actually have two batteries on this truck, so let me show you how to disconnect the other one. The other one is right behind the driver's side headlight. Same thing applies here. Grab a 10mm, loosen up the mounting nut. It's the same style terminal. Once you loosen it up enough, you should be able to wiggle it right off that battery and just put it down here. Obviously, there's no way it's going to come up by itself. At this point, you have all the power disconnected to the vehicle, so we can continue with our job. To do this job, you have two options. One, you can drop the tank, or two, you can lift the bed. Whatever works for you. I'm on a lift, so I'm going to drop the tank. The tank is located in this area on the driver's side of the vehicle, bolted onto the frame. And if you don't have a lift and you want to drop the tank, you can definitely do it with a floor jack or a couple different people to help you lower it to the ground once you unbolt it. Going through the rear wheel well, you're going to see this black cover that covers up the fuel tank. It's bolted on with several 13mm headed bolts. The way my lift arm is set up is it has to go on the frame, but this also goes over the frame. So I have to pull this down first in order to fit my lift arm. If you are not raising the vehicle this way, you can do this after it's raised up or just directly on the ground, but I'm going to start with this because I kind of have to. There are three of these. This is the rearmost bolt. Follow the fuel tank shield and you'll see another one. Last one is all the way up front. And now with this down, my lift arm can go here without pinching this shield. So let's go up. Now with everything up, to remove this shield, you just have to slide it backwards and off. I'm going to choose to remove the evap canister here, the charcoal canister, because it's going to give me much better access to removing the fuel line, which is up there. Also, this line right here goes to the tank, the top one, so we have to pull that off anyway. This is just going to give me a lot more space. I'm going to start with this lower line. You can either squeeze on this tab or just take a pick, pry the two tabs apart as you remove the line. Okay, leave that there. The next one, you're going to have to grab some pliers and pinch both ends. There we go. That last one up top should have a lock. Mine's missing. So all I'm going to do is push in on this and pull out on the line. Okay, there we go. There's a 13mm nut and bolt here. Gonna have to remove these. Okay, with this off, you'll be able to pull the canister out. Set that aside. And this right here, this line with the red locking clip is our fuel line. I'm gonna pry this clip out. Oh, there we go, that just fell off. All right, with that clip out, sometimes you can spray these with rust penetrant just to help them break free if the O-rings are stuck. There's a tab at the top, like a little locking clip. The red one was just a safety. This is the main tab right here at the top. You have to press that down. I'm gonna try and hook onto it with a pick, press down, or pull down, while I pull the line out. Okay. There we go. Now let's disconnect the filler neck hose off of the filler neck. You can disconnect it off the tank side, but it's really difficult to reach at this point. So I'm just gonna pull it off of here, and this is just a hose, it'll bend. This is just a regular hose clamp, so either a screwdriver or an 8mm socket will do the trick. All you have to do is just loosen this up until the hose is ready to come off. That should be plenty loose right there. Break this free, remove it, and then give the hose a few twists to break it free. Sometimes it's stuck here. To go in here carefully and just pry it away. Maybe spray it a little bit of rust penetrant. I'm gonna cut this wire tie here. There we go. There's also that smaller vent hose. We're gonna have to do the same thing to that. Also just a regular hose clamp. This is the point where you'd wanna support the fuel tank. If you're on the ground, just do whatever you have to do to get it supported so that as soon as we take the straps off, it doesn't just fall to the ground, of course. I have a transmission jack with a fuel tank attachment on it. With it supported, we can now safely remove the straps. There are two of them. Each has a 15mm bolt going through one side and the other side is just hooked on. I'll show you that side in a second. For now, let's take the 15mm bolts out. This is the rear strap. The J-nut that is supposed to be here for me is spinning, as you can see. So I'm gonna jam a wrench in here, 14mm. I believe it's supposed to be a 15, but it is no longer a 15. You gotta make sure that it's on there really tight. There's that. The bolt is good, but gonna need a new mounting nut. The front bolt's a little bit more difficult to see, but if you just look at the strap and follow it up, you'll see it right here. Also a 15mm bolt. All right, let's remove the straps now. As you can see in the rear, like I said earlier, they're just hooked on. So tilt it down and then up, sideways and off. Same with this one. Now carefully lower the tank. It is still connected at the top. The fuel pump has an electrical connector going to it. There may be other lines clipped onto different brackets there, so just be careful. Go down a little bit and then assess the situation. Oh. That's it. Now, once you bring it down far enough, you'll see the two electrical connectors we have to unplug. This is one of them. This is the main fuel pump connector. And then that's just a sensor here that we have to disconnect. You may even be able to remove this and just set it aside, or you can just directly unplug it. Looks like I can press the tab from here, push the connector off. There's that. Do the same to this one. This one has a lock on it, so you have to push the lock back. This one came out, not necessarily supposed to come out, but if it does, just take it out. That'll give you access to the locking tab of the connector that you have to pry down on while you remove the connector. This one is really, really stuffed on here with sand and debris. Might be a challenge. There we go. Get that wire aside, and let's drop the tank. Now we have to disconnect all the lines. There are 3 in total. I know this is a double line here, but I'm not pulling these apart. I'm just gonna disconnect this main connector and then these two. So for this one, I'm probably gonna need a pick underneath because there's a green tab underneath as well. You have to just squeeze those, pull this line off, set it aside. This one, you have to push down on. This one is a little bit stuck here, so I'm going to use whatever you have that'll push down enough to unlock it, and then give it a couple twists and pull. There we go. Same with this one, except it's a little bit smaller. All right. Now we have to pop the lock ring off. Recommend using a brass punch for this because anything else can make sparks. And at that point, you know, fuel fumes and sparks do not mix together. That is very bad, very dangerous. So use the appropriate tools to unlock this, spin it counterclockwise, and the fuel pump should come off. Also, as you can see, I soaked this down in rust penetrant, and I wanted to give it the best chance it had at coming off fairly easily. Also, if you have a lot of debris here at this point, blow it off. Do not use a vacuum cleaner of any sort because vacuum cleaners, electric motors, can make sparks. So you want to avoid that. Blow it off with compressed air. All right, let's get this out of here. There we go. Take your lock ring, slide it down, line it up with all of the tabs here, tap it in place if needed. And with that brass punch that you used to remove it, tap it clockwise to lock it in. Let's reconnect all these lines, make sure they click into place. There we go, that's a click. And this one. Perfect. The tank is ready to go back up. Now let's bring the tank up carefully. On the frame side, make sure the filler neck hoses go up and over the frame. Okay, don't go too far up. Let's connect that fuel pump while we have access. Connect this sensor. Make sure that electrical connector clicks. Do the same on the fuel pump. Make sure that clicks. There we go. Get this locking clip back on. And lock the connector. Now we can continue going up. Let's get the straps back in. That way we can remove our support. Okay. Now let's just snug these up since we have them ready to go here. Difficult to see on this back one, but snug it up. The torque for these bolts is 30 foot-pounds. Do the same to the other strap. Let's reconnect the filler neck. Get that back on. Let's get the hose clamp reattached so that it can stay nice and tight. With these worm clamps, you want to be careful not to over tighten them because if you do, they'll strip out and then you have to replace it. So just make it snug. As soon as it gets snug, just stop. That should be plenty tight. Do the same to the other smaller hose, this vent hose right here. Let's reconnect this main feed line at the top above the charcoal canister, or where the charcoal canister would go. Make sure that clicks. That clicked on really nicely. The fact that a little bit of fuel leaked actually helped out because fuel does lubricate these O-rings. It also makes sure that there's no debris on the line once the fuel comes out a little bit. Yeah, don't forget to put this red locking tab back on, whether yours fell off or not. And there we go. Reinstall the charcoal canister. Make sure you don't pinch or bend or break any of these lines. Once this is lined up, get that bolt through so you can clamp it on and have it stay in place. Hold one side, tighten up the other side. Nice and snug. And resecure all three of these lines from top to bottom. If they had any locks, like this one for example, mine's missing, but if it had it, you would put it back on. Make sure they all click in place so that they don't come undone later. All right, everything is clicked in. That's good to go. Let's get this shield reattached, put in all the bolts, and snug them up. When tightening these, just make them nice and snug. They're only holding on this plastic shield, and you definitely don't want to crack it. If you crack it, it's going to just fall off. So as soon as it bottoms out, give it about 1/8 of a turn, and that's it. If you removed your relay or the fuse and you haven't put it back yet, go ahead and put it back and put the cover back on for the fuse panel, the fuse box. There we go, make sure it's locked on. Let's reconnect the batteries now. It does not matter which one you start with if you have 2 batteries. I'm just going to start with this one. Place the negative terminal over the negative post of the battery, and with your 10mm socket, carefully snug up this mounting nut on the terminal and hold it from spinning if necessary. Once you get it snug enough, it should stop spinning. Give it a quick squeeze. Give it about 1/8 of a turn after it bottoms out. If you cannot move this terminal back and forth, you're good to go. Let's move on to the other one. Grab that terminal, place it over the battery, and just like the other one, tighten up that 10mm nut. Once it bottoms out, give it about 1/8 of a turn at most. Definitely not more than that. It's tight, it doesn't move. At this point inside the vehicle, you're going to want to put the key in the ignition, turn it to the on position. You're going to hear that fuel pump run. This is priming the system at this point. It's pushing fuel through the lines, creating pressure, and hopefully pushing the air out. I'm going to cycle the key a few times because the fuel pump only runs for a few seconds. If you're in a quiet environment, you can even hear it run actually. At this point, let's try to start it up. Perfect.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.